So Robert Johnson, he's there at the Delta in Mississippi. He wants to be the best blues guitarist ever, and he sells his soul to the devil. At least that's what some album executive said decades later.
Mhm.
He can't really sell his soul.
Mm-mm.
So instead, it's just the person inviting the devil in
Yes.
to their body.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, when you make a deal with the devil, it's an invitation. And he takes the invitation very seriously. He comes right in.
Around a week ago, Selena Spooky Boo released a video about how musicians are believed to have sold their soul to the devil in order to gain their fame, their fortune, and their talent. Now, initially, I was going to do a quick vlog covering it, and then I thought, no, I'll do a deeper analysis of the video. But then eventually, I just thought, well, stuff all that. I will do my own version. And so that's what this video is. It's the first part of a two-part series looking at what is known as the Satanic Panic, which was particularly rife in the 1980s. And this video will look at the history of the legend of making a deal with the devil. It will look at how it started in music in the 20th century and how it developed into prejudice against rock music and its musicians into the 1980s and beyond.
Imagine this. You're standing at the crossroads, alone, broke, desperate. You've got the talent, you have the drive, but the world just isn't listening. Then, out of the shadows, someone appears. They know your name, they know your dreams, and they offer you everything. Fame, fortune, influence, the kind of success that legends are made out of. But there's one catch. You have to give up your soul. Sound like folklore? Maybe. But some say this is the exact deal that still happens in the music industry.
Making a deal with the devil has been a folklore for centuries. Different tales and legends and myths have popped up time and time again through history. In the 20th century, it became more and more prevalent to apply it to music, to the music industry. And what would follow would be legends, would be stories, and outcries.
Or perhaps no example of what can come along to warp the minds of youth stands out stronger than that of what's known as the violent punk rocker movement that originated in England.
But there is no doubt, at least not in our reporting, that that heavy metal music plays a role. Every single kid whose case we know about, who committed a violent act in Satan's name, was also into heavy metal music.
Only the soul is immortal. And yours belongs to me.
The centuries-old story of making a pact with the devil for fame, wealth, riches and power is one which appears time and time again in folklore, literature, cinema and music. It plays out the notion of making a deal with the devil in order to live as a god upon earth before spending an eternity in hell. The most famous rendition of the story is Dr. Faustus, written in the late 16th century by Christopher Marlowe. It is a play about Faustus' rise as a magician thanks to the pact with Lucifer. Near the end of the play, he tries to repent, but after falling in love with Helen of Troy, he renews his pact with Lucifer and is taken to hell. Although the most well-known story on this subject, it was neither the first nor the last to discuss making the choice to effectively selling your soul to Satan for immediate gain. A Greek tale called Theophilus, Friend of God, was written in the 6th century. An unhappy cleric sells his soul to the devil, but is redeemed by the Virgin Mary. The character reappears in texts in the 9th and 10th and 13th centuries. Pope Sylvester II, 946 to 1003, was believed to have won the papacy after playing dice with the devil. Bernard Foch, a 17th century captain for the East India Company, sailed so fast between locations he was believed to have made a pact with the devil. He is the model for the ghostly captain of the Flying Dutchman. There are many more examples, often used to explain sudden power or wealth, and at times perpetuated by the soul seller himself. The prevailing legend for the 20th century, still used today, is the story of blues musician Robert Johnson. He is recognized as a master of the blues and one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century, despite having a career of only 7 months. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame cites him as the first ever rock star. Born in Mississippi in 1911, he acquired his love for the blues as a child in Memphis. From 1932 till his death in 1938, Johnson moved around Mississippi and Arkansas, occasionally traveling further afield. He was a womanizer who seduced women at his performances and would visit them to stay when traveling around the states. The story of Johnson's pact with the devil is as follows. He goes into the countryside with a $10 guitar. He is looking for inspiration. He decides to leave a turbulent past behind him. His future lies on the roads ahead. He stops at a crossroads where 4 dust roads converge. Johnson drops to his knees, hoping to meet his maker. He holds his guitar in front of him for inspiration, but Lucifer appears with a proposition. In return for his soul, Lucifer offered Johnson musical greatness. He returned to venues to play his music a year later, a virtuoso, and crowned king of the Delta Blues. He becomes the forefather of rock and roll. Though his fame grew, his troubles continued. Flirting with the wrong girl and ignoring warnings, he was handed a bottle of whiskey with a broken seal by an avenging husband. A few days later, Johnson died of poisoning. His final hours were painful. He crawled outside for air and died. His rain-soaked body was not discovered till the next morning. The legend of Johnson, the Devil and the Crossroads has been played out many times since. Far Out magazine states that without Johnson there would be no Muddy Waters, so no rock and roll. Bob Dylan's life changed upon hearing his music. And Keith Richards is such a fan, he said if the Stones ever fared badly, he would have been an eccentric, vicarious biographer for Johnson. The Crossroads story was regularly used in TV's Supernatural, and the theme of making a pact to the devil used in countless movies, for example, The Devil's Advocate.
The whole thing began. God likes to watch. He's an absentee landlord.
Faust.
Like true
Dorian
face.
Gray. Sleepy Hollow. Ghost Rider. End of Days. Constantine. Angel Heart.
Private detective paid the
Rosemary's Baby.
And there was a kid they called Lightning Boy.
Johnson's story was also unforgotten in rock music, and its demonic pact legacy helped fuel the fire against rock and roll from the 1950s and beyond. As rock and roll exploded onto the mainstream in the 1950s, it was the appeals to the younger audiences, i.e. the teenagers, which caused both concern and outrage to parents. And the words juvenile delinquents were everywhere in the media. And although this era saw a sharp rise in youth gang culture and crime to the mainstream audience, the never-ending blame was placed upon rock and roll music and its corrupting influences on teenagers. Lyrics expressed the themes of religion, sexuality, and political stances, deemed offensive by the moral majority. Rock and roll gave teenagers a way to distance themselves from the views and values of their parents, and this scared the status quo. Ultimately, there became two generations who could neither understand each other nor would try to. Teenagers saw freedom. Their parents saw a lack of respect for authority. The younger generation was generalized as corrupted. The whole concept was summarized in the 1955 movie Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean.
Huh? I'm in trouble.
Jim, what happened? What kind of trouble are you in?
Jim Stark, things pretty rough for you at home?
They think that I can make friends.
Your folks didn't understand.
They never do.
But rock and roll was an unstoppable force, and the criticism and accusations of moral and spiritual corruption on its audience is still seen today. The tidal wave continued in the 60s with The Who, the Rolling Stones, and particularly the Beatles at the front. An urban legend was born in 1966 which suggested Paul McCartney had died in a car accident in 1966 and was replaced by a lookalike. One of the ways this legend was perpetuated were the rumours of hidden messages in the Beatles' music, most notably in Strawberry Fields Forever. People believe Lennon says, "I buried Paul" at the end of the song. On the White Album track, I'm So Tired, the rumour was if you play the song backwards, the words "Paul is dead, man" could be heard. This opened the floodgate to a new way of society trying to demonise rock music.
There was a time when somebody wrote a thesis about Paul McCartney being dead, and Paul is dead. And if you played back the records, I'm very serious here, it's crazy, but if you played back the records, there was something which said Paul is dead. And so then they started to play back all manner of records, and of course we were going to be main candidates for it. And somebody said, "Oh, it says My Sweet Satan in it." And I thought, oh gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round rather than backwards.
When Led Zeppelin released Stairway to Heaven, it became an iconic track for rock fans, while the rest of the world failed to notice. However, according to Grunge magazine in 1981, a preacher called Michael Mills changed that. In the US, the Satanic Panic hit the USA. I will cover the broader impact of this in a later video. Michael Mills, wanting to be part of those speaking out against the so-called evils of rock music, and said that Stairway to Heaven contained the backmasked words, "Master Satan, serve me, and there's no escaping it." In 1990, a trial claiming Judas Priest caused the death of two fans with subliminal words in their music began. The families of the two young men claimed the band's song "Better By You, Better Than Me" contained subliminal messages which encouraged fans to unalive themselves. They accused three messages: do it, let's be dead, and try.
Thank you. Is the exhalation of breath?
Yes.
Is that a normal part of your singing?
That's the way I've always sung. That's just my style.
Is there some effect that has for the aesthetics of the song?
It's just the way it's performed, you know, the emotion involved and the feeling that you give out when you're singing it.
Are there subliminal duets on the Better By You, Better Than Me song?
Absolutely not.
Lead singer Rob Halford told the court what was being heard was him exhaling while singing. Guitarist Glenn Tipton insisted on going into the studio with the album, recorded it on tape and played it backwards to prove that flukes could happen if you play speech backwards. They immediately found, "Hey Ma, my chair's broken. Give me a peppermint. Help me keep a job." Although the band were found not guilty of causing the deaths, the suspicions of subliminals endured, and this perpetuated the unaccepting attitude to rock by parts of society. Halford would later say, "We accept that some people don't like heavy metal, but we can't let them convince us that it's negative and destructive. Heavy metal is a friend that gives people great pleasure and enjoyment and helps them through hard times. He says it tore us up emotionally hearing someone say to the judge and the cameras that this is a band that breaks music, that kills good people. During the 1980s, MTV fueled the fire of linking heavy metal to the devil by airing a documentary called Devil Worshippers. It included the imagery of metal album covers. Rock's love of macabre imagery for entertainment and rebellion was used against it, with accusations of satanic influence and deals with the devil. They also flowed through into the video trend, ignited by MTV, that rock and metal bands had started to embrace. Parental advisory stickers were compulsory on albums with explicit themes and lyrics. However, this backfired, as it made many albums more desirable. Rock star Ozzy Osbourne was regularly brought into interviews to defend the content of his music and the imagery that he used.
Ozzy,
Yeah?
I know that your lyrics are less excessive than groups like Slayer or Venom or Iron Maiden or some of the others, but still, for some reason, maybe it's because you've been around for so long, I see tattoos of your name on some of these teenage devil worshippers' arms. Wherever I see devil graffiti and satanic graffiti, I see your name also. Do you feel a sense of responsibility, Oz?
The only responsibility I feel is the fact that I'm a true musician in what I play. I don't want to make anybody start doing all this devil worship crap, because that's not my intention. Although I have sang on a few songs about the devil, that's about it. I don't want anyone to harm themselves.
What about the issue of responsibility? What about the whole thing about guilt? Do you feel responsible?
I don't feel guilty. I feel kind of persecuted by everybody because I'm not a bad guy. My intentions are not to harm anyone. In fact, it's directly the opposite. Like when people come to my concerts, I want them to have a good, fun evening out, And it seems to me that a lot of people judge the book by the cover more so, and they write things about me where they don't even know what they're talking about,
I've been a musician since I was a kid, and I've also been a rocker since I was a kid. My main genre of music to listen to, I do listen to other genres, but I've always been a rocker at heart. And I was a teenager in the 80s and in my early 20s, and I spent, especially in my early 20s, I spent so many days when I lived in London going to rock music. Concerts, gigs, small venues, large venues in between. And I did experience some of the prejudice against rock fans at that time. It wasn't unusual, and it kind of probably is exasperated that if you don't have to sort of dress properly for work, it's kind of the gear that you live in. So you were always being judged. In the UK, it was less to do with religion, but it was more just to do with, if you're a rocker, you were bad news. And in my own experience, it's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Rock music lends itself to dark imagery. That goes right back from the blues of the early 20th century. How it influenced rock and roll, how the music itself is the basis for rock and roll. Robert Johnson is seen as being the first major rock star. And the music influenced a lot of musicians of the 60s and 70s and beyond. And lyrics and subject matter has always been very controversial, has always been very descriptive. It's rock and roll, it's rock. But there's always been this generational gap, and even in today's society, where that generational gap is probably a little bit smaller when it comes to music, because rockers are getting on in age that were rockers in the 60s, 70s and 80s. You don't love that, you don't lose that love for the music. and you don't lose the love for the imagery and the whole aesthetic vibe. I mean, I'm an artist. I love the imagery of art. I miss the large vinyl albums simply because of, you know, the way it could project that artwork. And we were probably lucky in the UK that we suffered less from the Satanic Panic here, because as a whole, it's a less deeply religious society. And in my next video, I'm going to be looking at the further reaching effect of the Satanic Panic, and not just on rock music, and music in general. There are still artists today that come under fire for maybe having done a deal with the devil, sold out, selling their soul to become rich and famous and powerful, and, you know, their private practices maybe under scrutiny for, you know, are they devil worshippers? What are they doing to actually gain these riches? It's part and parcel of people who are powerful and successful, and other people looking at it, especially when they don't approve of what's being done. Other people looking to say, I wonder how they've actually achieved that success. Maybe they've achieved that success because they're popular, because people like it. And when civic leaders, religious leaders, parents, when they see an influence that they don't approve of, they're going to look for reasons. They're going to look in all the wrong places. And so in part 2 of this series, I will really be reinforcing how badly the Satanic Panic affected some parts of society and some people.
The Satanism that you see is not Satanism. It's some kind of, it's some kind of caricature Satanism. Real Satanism wouldn't be. If you're looking for Satanism, first of all, you don't look to rock and roll. A bunch of kids running around playing loud guitars and going like that. That's Halloween. But Satanism.